Very good workout. Crazy workout. I hope you brought your guns for this one. Hey, I'm Chef Gregory Baumgartner. I'm the pastry chef at EP Los Angeles, and today we're going to make Not Your Mother's chocolate mousse cake. We have the Devil's Food cake, chocolate wafer crust, and mousse on top. So now we're going to start mixing our cake base. We have 1.5 cups of butter, 11 eggs, 4.5 cups of light brown sugar. We have about 3.5 cups of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and then half a teaspoon of baking soda as well. And we have warm coffee, about 1.5 cups. And we have 1.5 cups of cocoa powder, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1.5 cups of milk chocolate, and 1⅓ cup of dark chocolate. So before we begin today, we're gonna go ahead and preset our oven to 325 degrees. So for our eggs, we're just gonna whisk them and also throw into our vanilla extract into our eggs. So now that we have our eggs and they're slightly whisked, we're just gonna take our brown sugar. Feel free to just break it up into the eggs as you go. My mom used to make, as a kid, this frozen chocolate mousse cake. You know, chocolate wafer cookies that were crushed up and then just put mousse on top and freeze it. I thought it would be a little bit interesting to kind of go ahead and do a new rendition of it. Don't worry, this may look intimidating to you. Don't freak out, it's okay. It's all gonna come together in the end. So now that our brown sugar is in with our eggs, you just wanna whisk, and you're gonna still see some clumps. It's okay. Now that that's ready to go, we want to hydrate our cocoa powder. I've gone ahead and used coffee. You can feel free to use water, milk, anything you want to hydrate. You just want to make sure it's warm. That way it hydrates properly. You want to whisk to get out all of those clumps. It's very important. The eggs and the sugar are mixed. First thing we'll add in is our cocoa paste. Using a spatula, just to make sure that there are no clumps on the bottom. Put that to the side. You just want to go ahead and get a pot about this size, 1/4 of the way filled with water, and bring it to a boil. We go ahead and get our chocolates into another bowl. That way they can be ready for being melted. And put it over top of our pot to expedite the process of boiling. And make sure that you use a spatula to occasionally stir. I'm going to remove the pot and place it onto a rivet. And because that water's hot inside and I've covered it, that water and that steam is going to continue to heat the bowl and also continue to heat through the chocolate. Now we're just going to slowly whisk in our melted chocolate. We can put that to the side. We can go ahead and begin to melt our butter. When the butter is about, we could say 1/2 to 1/4 of the way melted, you can go ahead and take it off the heat. You just want to slowly whisk in your melted butter. You pour in all of your butter at once, it's not necessarily going to mix very well. Okay, all of our butter is incorporated. Now I recommend folding in your flour by 3 parts. I went ahead and took the extra step to go ahead and add our baking soda and baking powder into our flour. If it does begin to clump, by using the whisk, you can actually get most of it out, if not all of it. I'm gonna go ahead and spray a 1/2 sheet tray quite liberally. That way it doesn't stick to the sides. So now we're just going to lay it flat onto our tray, ready to bake. You want to kind of guide the base with your spatula. Scrape down your bowl all the way. Now our base is completely in the pan. Now we're just going to place our cake in the preheated oven at 325 degrees. We're just going to let it bake for about anywhere from 45 minutes to 1.5 hours, depending on the type of oven that you have at home. So this next part of the cake we're going to make is the chocolate wafer crust. You know, chocolate wafer cookies that were crushed up. So the bigger pieces, great. The smaller pieces, great. We're going to use about 1/2 of this, which is roughly 2 cups. We're just going to place that into a separate bowl. On the side, we have maybe about 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, and then just a pinch of salt. I would say about 1/8 of a teaspoon. Work the sugar, salt, and chocolate cookie together. And next I have 1/2 cup of melted butter. What I'm looking for here is something that's a little bit more wet. As you can see, it's nice and glossy. If you have clumps of sugar, it's not a big deal. You're gonna be throwing this back in the oven, so that sugar will melt, and it's gonna just create a nice caramelization on the crust. So next I'm gonna go into my form, but I definitely wanna press on it. That way, the crust holds when I go to bake it. And once it comes out of the oven, 325 degrees for about 15 minutes. It'll be nice and stable, and you don't have to worry about it crumbling up back on you. So now that our cake is out of the oven, I went ahead and pulled out our chocolate wafer crust as well, as that's finished and done. If you don't have another form at home, it's not a big deal. You can actually use a bowl or a plate and kind of just set it down on top of the cake, and using a knife, just cut around, and that way you can pull it out. Okay, so next, I'm just going to push down. I'm going to use 2 of these to build up into my cake. You don't want to twist or turn because you have that tendency to do that, and then everything will tear. Move the tray. You see here is I have a nice, beautiful, dense cake. It's nice and moist on the inside. Now I'm just going to hold off and reserve those while I build the mousse, and then we can assemble the cake totally. We're going to start with about 14 egg whites. Next we have food grade gelatin sheets. If you're lucky enough to find them, which I highly recommend using these. If you're looking for powdered gelatin, you want to use 200 grade. I would say it's probably about 2 tablespoons worth of gold gelatin, and you'll use it the same way that I do in this recipe. We also have water here for our gelatin sheets. Next we have about 6 cups of melted milk chocolate. There's about 4 egg yolks here. We have about 2 cups of cream, about a cup milk. And finally we have a cup of sugar with 1 vanilla bean. So now I'm going to go ahead and strip my vanilla bean and just scrape the edge of my knife all the way down. Put just the seeds into my sugar. Now with my fingers, I'm just going to massage the vanilla beans in, and we'll begin to whip our egg whites. What we're doing is making a French meringue. French meringue is very basic. It's not cooking anything. It's just adding sugar into your raw egg whites. Now what we're looking for in our egg whites is for it to kind of come to a loose peak. And what that means is they just start to kind of hold peaks. You can actually see them developing in the bowl. Next, we're going to go ahead and add our milk into a pot. We're just going to heat that on low. What we're going to be doing is making a ganache with our chocolate and our milk. At this time, my milk is coming to a scald, a little bit of a boil. That's okay, don't worry. People may tell you not to boil or scald milk or cream. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to also bloom my gelatin. We're resaturating with moisture. We'll let this sit upwards 5 to 6 minutes to saturate all the way through. Remember, cold water, with maybe an ice cube or 2 is perfect. Now that our gelatin is completely bloomed, we'll add that first into our milk. I just suggest giving it a light squeeze, making sure that there's not too much moisture, but there's enough moisture where it's still saturated. I'm gonna give it a mix and make sure that that gelatin dissolves into your milk before you do anything else. And now we'll begin to assemble our ganache with our chocolate and our milk. So we're gonna incorporate it again very slowly. As you can see, I have a nice, beautiful, glossy chocolate ganache. I'm gonna add in that last bit of sugar. Our egg whites, perfect. As you can see, not broken, glossy, and they have stiff peaks. So I'm just gonna pour my egg yolks straight into the chocolate. This ganache is actually still quite warm. It's probably about 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So it'll actually kind of kill off any bacteria. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and begin to fold in my whites to my chocolate. When you're folding something in, especially into something that's hot, you kind of want to do it in increments. So for this, I'm just going to add about 1/4, and then I'll add in the other 3/4. Okay, so everything is nice and cohesive, no streaks. We're ready to incorporate the rest. As you can see, it's nice, beautiful, glossy, and it actually has quite a build to it. And now we're going to go ahead and whip our cream. Specifically for this one, you know you want to use heavy whipping cream. I'm actually going to whip it to where it's probably considered soft peaks, because at that stage, that's the amount of air that you're going to be able to get in there. As you can see, I got maybe about medium peak on that, and that's perfect. Now, again, in increments, I'm going to do 1/4, and then the rest. All right, now the mousse is done, and we're ready to begin assembling our cake. We have the devil's food cake, we have the chocolate wafer crust, and we have the chocolate mousse that we just assembled. At this point, we kind of want to move a little bit fast. So we're going to go ahead and add our mousse in to the form itself. Just a little bit, I would say no more than 2.5 cups. Next, we'll add our first layer of cake. I recommend doing it upside down. That way the crust is on the bottom. And I just placed that right in the center. Next I'll go ahead and cap off that first layer of cake. And I'm going to put my last layer of devil's food cake. And yet again, cap off with my chocolate mousse. And at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and stick it directly into the freezer. I want it to freeze for roughly about 12 hours. And as I said, my mom used to serve this frozen. For me, I let it thaw out on a plate, and I like to enjoy it when it's actually room temperature, so you can pull it out once it's finished. Okay, so now we have our finished result, and I still have some of that excess crumble. Don't think I was gonna waste this. You can take some of that excess crumble that you had and just put it directly on top. Get fun with it, who cares? Looks great. This is certainly not the cake that my mom made, and I definitely cannot wait to dive right in. Look at that, beautiful layers. Really good. The mousse is nice and silky. It's actually pretty fucking good.